Actually landed about 2 metres behind me, but I hadn't noticed that. I was too busy filming, but that would have been fatal if it had hit.
Time to go! Time to go! Time to go! Bombs are landing. Okay, go to the top one. Bombs are over ahead. That's enough.
This time, John and Jeff escaped unharmed. Other volcano hunters have not been so lucky. For 25 years, a French husband and wife team, Maurice and Katia Kraft, observed and recorded the behavior of volcanoes. They stunned the world with their bravery and the fantastic images they filmed. These two volcanologists witnessed more than 150 eruptions around the world. When Mount Unzen in Japan started to boil over in 1991, the Krafts were there, followed by a large group of the world's media.
This is one of the smallest pyroclastic flow I have seen. I hope to see bigger ones than this one, because this is very small, really, yes. I am never afraid, because I have seen so much eruptions in 23 years that even if I die tomorrow, I don't care.
Prophetic words. The day after this interview, the Krafts were killed by a volcano's deadliest weapon, a pyroclastic flow, where the summit of the volcano explodes and then collapses into a billowing cloud of searing hot ash and boulders. Tragically, the two volcanologists had greatly underestimated its size. A pyroclastic flow will incinerate anything in its path. It enveloped the Krafts and 39 others, mostly cameramen who had followed them up the mountain. This place was once a tropical paradise, but pyroclastic flows have devastated the Caribbean island of Montserrat. The volcano that hangs above the ghost town of Plymouth has been exploding every few months for over 4 years. A dome of solidified magma plugs the top of the volcano. Underneath is new gas-rich magma, waiting to be uncorked like a champagne bottle. Montserrat is located in the middle of an island chain of explosive volcanoes that divides the Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean Sea. In 1996, this island turned into a vision of hell when the volcano burst into life for the first time in 400 years. Massive clouds of gas and rock were thrown high into the air. When they fell back to Earth, they roared down the slopes as pyroclastic flows, loaded with millions of tons of burning rock and ash. Every flow has 2 layers. On top, a billowing mass of hot ash and gas called the surge cloud. Hidden underneath, a deadly avalanche of giant boulders. For 4 years, Plymouth has been terrorized by the volcano. It has forced the evacuation of 8,000 people, 2/3 of the island's population. Montserrat is isolated. Its main link to the outside world was the airport. One of the pyroclastic flows swept straight through the terminal buildings. Former chief scientist of Montserrat's Volcano Observatory, Professor Steve Sparks, has returned to the island to document the immense forces that occur inside these deadly flows.
I'm next to the conveyor belt which used to bring in my luggage, I remember when I first came to Montserrat, because it was destroyed in the pyroclastic flow of 21st of September 1997. And of course all you can see now is lumps of rock brought in by the pyroclastic flow.
Some of the rocks were the size of a house. Where there were once homes and buildings, there is now only a lunar landscape.
We're in the bar area, and the hot pyroclastic flow came through here and was so hot that it melted the beer bottles, because they've been heated up to perhaps about 400 degrees centigrade. And some of them have even been completely filled with ash from the pyroclastic flow.
The heat of the surge cloud above the avalanche is so intense, it can incinerate a whole community in seconds.
Some very large pyroclastic flows came down the valley behind us, and the billowing surge cloud above the avalanche part of the pyroclastic flow spilled out of the valley, and it was still very dynamic, and it stripped off the roofs of the houses, including this church, and set many of them on fire. And you can see here that the timbers behind me have been burnt by the surge cloud.
The hot debris and gas travel over the ground at more than 100 miles an hour. Too fast to escape. Taxi driver Arthur Mead was working close to the volcano when suddenly a surge cloud engulfed his car.
I was in this very same car, and I just couldn't see. I looked out, and there was a lot of fire all around the car. I said, well, it would be better for me to come out. If the car explodes, then I might be lucky to get away. So I did.
Right now is when you...
And I had on a boots with some bobby socks, and the ash seemed to go up in the air, even though it was so thin, go down on my foot. It did not burn the shoe nor the socks, but it really burned the surface of the top of my feet, on both feet. And honestly, I've been burned by fire, hot water, matches. I've never felt anything like that. Well, I felt it deep down, it's like in my innermost part of my body. I felt it to the depths of my soul. I've never felt anything so hot.
Arthur Mead was lucky. If he'd been nearer to the center of the pyroclastic flow, he would have been incinerated without a trace. But not everyone escaped. Despite an evacuation order, 19 people lost their lives. They had returned to the danger zone to tend their farms and livestock, and were trapped when a massive flow raced down the mountain. When the victims were recovered, they were found in what's called the pugilistic pose. This strange posture is exactly the same as found in fire victims. Intense heat cooks the muscles, causing them to contract. More evidence that inside a pyroclastic flow, temperatures can reach as high as 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Since 1996, the volcano has been constantly active. Most people have left the island, but one man who stayed behind has risked his life to capture these incredible pictures. David Lee lost his business when Montserrat started to erupt. He became obsessed with the volcano and began to make trips up to the crater to capture the action on video.
I went up to the crater, actually the crater edge. It was on a Sunday. There was no one around. I couldn't find anybody to go with me, as a matter of fact. I said, well, I'll just grab my camera and I'll run up there and get some shots. And as I'm coming over the top of Chance's Peak and walking over the 100 yards to the crater edge, I opened the camera up and said, well, here's what it's like to walk up on the crater. And just as I walked up on the edge, the whole thing blows up. It's right in here, you start to hear it. And it makes your heart beat real fast. Anybody watching this, don't be stupid enough to come up here. This is my last trip, and it's hot already, and it's spewing right now. There's an eruption right now. That's hot stuff going out. It's falling down to this side. I'm not going to stay long. That's Tar River. She hasn't fired up too bad. What you hear there is rocks coming up, and I'm getting out of here. I'm just going to take a snapshot, and it got real guttural.
Il rumore è diventato molto sordo e sta piovendo di tutto alle mie spalle.
Nonostante il pericolo, David Lee continuò a riprendere. Tutto quello che doveva fare era correre giù dalla montagna e pregare.
Ha ceduto proprio quando ero giunto sul bordo. Signore, sono nelle tue mani. Tu sei il mio rifugio e la mia forza in ogni difficoltà. Questo è stato il mio ultimo viaggio lassù, ragazzi. Vi sembro impaurito? Non ne sono ancora fuori. Sono sceso di soli 200 metri. Se quello esplode, per me è finita. In nessun'altra situazione ho mai pensato di essere così vicino alla morte.
Al contrario dei Kraft, David Lee riuscì a salvarsi. E nonostante se la sia vista molto brutta, ha continuato a filmare le eruzioni di Montserrat.
Ho imparato a conoscerle molto bene. Sono femminili, nel senso che ti seducono totalmente. E vogliono che tu venga sempre più vicino, magari per vedere meglio una colata piroclastica o un'esplosione pericolosa.
Montserrat erutta a intervalli di pochi mesi. A volte le eruzioni sono così dense da oscurare completamente il sole.
Riesco ad intravedere la luce del sole sopra di me, ma vi assicuro che qua giù è buio pesto. Ce ne stiamo andando in fretta e furia.
Been so lucky. For 25 years, a French husband and wife team, Maurice and Katia Kraft, observed and recorded the behavior of volcanoes. They stunned the world with their bravery and the fantastic images they filmed. These two volcanologists witnessed more than 150 eruptions.
Actually landed about 2 meters behind me, but I hadn't noticed that. I was too busy filming. But that would have been fatal if it had hit.
Time to go! Time to go! Time to go! Bombs are landing. Okay, grab the tripod. Bombs are over ahead. That's enough.
This time, John and Jeff escaped unharmed. Other volcano hunters have not around the world. When Mount Unzen in Japan started to boil over in 1991, the crafts were there, followed by a large prophetic words. The day after this interview, the crafts were killed by a volcano's deadliest weapon, a pyroclastic flow, where the summit of the volcano explodes and then collapses into a billowing cloud of searing hot ash and boulders. Group of the world's media.
This is one of the smallest pyroclastic flow I have seen. I hope to see bigger ones than this one, because this is very small, really, yes. I am never afraid, because I have seen so much eruptions in 23 years that even if I die tomorrow, I don't care.